only just a fixed trajectory. That is something I'm really love to do in the next 10 or 20 years. But out of those one, I think something what I really love is how to bring economic perspective to think about if we consider microbial group interaction, so they play a role consider cost benefit, how each individual microbial individuals or even functional group, any decision make, they produce enzyme, they start to decompose organic matter. It's not just a wired fixed function. It's really based on the cost benefit. So we are able to use economic perspective to understand it. I think that is one of the mainly I think is very important perspective we can use to improve the model to let the model be more dynamic and biologically reasonable. Yeah.
It seems that our system models are gonna become more and more complex. If we include a lot of other components from the economy, from that aspects. Have we got any definitive answers to any big questions in macroecology? Because you can work on this field for a long time, you can use models, field work. So do you have any like definitive answers to these big questions?
Uh, I think it's not, I don't think that's my answer from my lab. It's, I think, for the community. So based on my understanding and for any progress recently in the field, I think scientists did make progress in this direction, at least for the large scale ecology, or you can call microecology. One of the clear answer is like the microbe does show a spatial pattern. It does follow the rule of the biogeographical pattern, and we are able to use modern approach combined with the field work and some data synthesis to form maybe some conceptual framework to combine several mechanisms to explain this pattern. But exactly which pattern or which mechanism play a big role, how these different role have played a even stronger or weaker role, that depends on the system, depends on the time scale, and also depends on the environmental condition. That is, I think, is something I think is we are quite sure we have been moving forward into in this direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talking about breakthroughs, are there any paradigms in ecology that you think are holding us back from progressing and making conceptual breakthroughs?
Uh, for the ecology field, I think in the past decade, few decades, the entire community already make quite a lot progress in terms of understanding the nature and also the management perspective. Uh, but the only thing is not really big paradigm prevent our understanding, but I think something we may be able to do better, not only just rely on the past paradigms. Uh, that's the only thing I think is we can do better is we should try to incorporate some tools and standing for many different fields, not only rely on the ecology. So again, I said, so ecology is not only one discipline. It really interact with many other disciplines. So how can we really uh, integrate the information tools from other disciplines to further advance our understanding of the ecosystem and also management perspective? I think that's something we are able to do better if we do better in the integrate information.
Thank you. I remember yesterday you showed a map about biogeography, and there's a question about that.
Okay.
How does macroecology differ from traditional biogeography? And what is the importance of differentiating them?
Okay. That's a good question. So the biogeography has been as a research direction for many years, more than 100 years eventually. But the microecology, it was used, first used by Jim Brown and another Brown, I think Brown, I forgot his last name. So in 1989, they published a science paper to use this term. That is about, if we count, is about less than 40 years, 30, 35 years. And then after that, microecology becoming more and more popular. People use that to describe the plant, animal, even microbes, activity, function, many different ecological field. That is the things that we see the historical development for these two terms, and definitely there's some difference. So biogeography is, I think, it limited by the previous understanding and also the tools. It really more emphasize the spatial distribution for plant, for function, for microbiomes. But the microecology is more focused on not only for the pattern, but also we need move one step further to look at what's the cause for this pattern. That is what we define as mechanistic understanding, to use different mechanisms to explain the pattern. So that is the difference between the biogeography and the microecology. To really distinguish this one, I think the community has done a lot. And that is, I think, the benefit for this microecologists. One thing, knowledge accumulation, we have more and more information on this field. Meanwhile, it's benefit from technology advance. So we have much advanced technology, and then we have much better data. For example, DNA data, right? DNA sequencing data. We cannot imagine this 50 years ago, but right now we have a lot, tons of lot data, and also analysis approach. For example, statistical approach, many more has been invented, and also machine learning. So those two has been invented, and also based on the data, advanced technology, and also we have much more information. So those different combination, I think they really stimulated the microecology development, and I'm sure there will be continued development. We should see much more progress in this microecology field.
So yesterday you showed some simulations about how you apply the findings that you found from macroecology to Earth system modeling. So here's a
Okay.
question for you is how does microbial ecology affect climate? And how are changes to microbial communities being incorporated into climate prediction and projection?
Okay. Uh, this is a very good question. It has been a core question in the modern community more than 10 years or even 15 years. I think early 2000, so the community started thinking about how can we better represent microbes in the model. Definitely, microbial has played a big role in the biochemical cycle system that has been long been recognized. But due to limitation by the technology, by data, so people not really understand a lot. Only know microbial has big role in the ecosystem. So they affect carbon cycle, affect plant growth, affect on the nutrient cycle. Everything here will influence the climate system. But in early 2000s, so scientists started to think about how to better simulate microbes. So then I think Josh Sherman and a few other scientists, they developed model, and that is more like assist, not really having, in that stage, people have not think about putting the assist model. But then after 2010, more and more scientists start to really take a step further to put back in the assist model. Before that, people think about it, but not really big progress made. After 2010, we can make progress, really simulate micro's functionality in the model. And then gradually, people start really play the microbial in the assist model. At least make some progress. We have not really fully represent microbial yet, but we have make some progress. We are able to better simulate microbial functionality, at least for the decomposed organic carbon, uh, affect the nutrient cycle. In that ways, we are, I think, making progress. And also the greenhouse gas like methane fluxes, nitric oxide fluxes, those has been in certain way, we have considered microbial have function on that, and those has been partially incorporated in the model, analysis model.
So have you done any analysis like to assess the the sensitivity of the climate simulations to including the microbial ecology or not into that system. Have you done any sensitivity test like 10%, 20%? Um, it, do you have any numbers for that?
Uh, for my lab, we have not. We haven't done this for the entire Earth simulation, but we do have some plot level or even like a regional level simulation for how sensitive the model output, like the plant growth respond to microbial activity. Not really number, but we do see the microbial do play a role in affect the entire system. And across entire community, a few other group they also done some the work use different model because entire community many different group they use different model. Even this model represent microbial activity in a different ways. So the entire community start to work on this direction. Well, I don't think anyone have exactly quantified how
Okay,
the sensitivity, but that definitely is one of the important issue the community is addressed. Hopefully, next few years they will be done by some group.
thank
Yeah.
you. Um, Now I will jump into a question about temporal scales because that's also a question from myself that because the how does the temporal scale of microbial systems inform models of microbial macroecology? For those of us coming from different system, different field, it's very hard to think about the time scale for the microbial systems.
Okay.
So could you explain more about that?
So you mean the
Like how does the temporal scale of the microbial systems inform models of microbial macroecology? So basically, is that the
okay.
very short time scale influence the more longer time scale system? If I understand correctly.
Uh, Thanks. So in terms of time scale, we ever know that microbe have a much faster turnover compared with other function. So in that case, we can say that microbe has much stronger impact at fine scale, but it doesn't mean microbe has no or weak functionalities in the longer time scale. If we consider the feedback, so if you have the carbon cycle microbe activity, if positive feedback is forming, the minor change in the microbe activity can cause big impact on the entire Earth. But most important case, like how this feedback was formed, is that positive or is that negative? And which condition is negative, which condition is positive? Those rely on more and more investigation. But right now, we don't have a clear understanding in that aspect. But definitely I think that what I can say is microbe does has impact on the short term and also long term.
Okay.
So that's how we can use modeling approach to study well, because in the field work normally is I don't think anyone has studied microactivity or impact over few centuries. So 10 year, 20 year, 30 year, that's the longest. But luckily, if we combine those data with model, hopefully we can have much better understanding of a long term, even century scale, even more than longer in century scale, how this microbe will play a role in this feedback, form different kind of feedback. It will have big impact on the climate system, on our system.
Thank you. There's a follow-up question on that. Are there ecological mismatches between the faster life cycle of the microbes coupled with the slower scales that plants and animals and environmental change?
Mm,
And how does this affect the larger ecological systems like climate?
okay. Yeah. This question is somehow relevant to the previous one,
Yeah.
because again, so the different component of the ecosystem has different sensitivity to the not only temperature and also to some disturbance, fire, flooding. So in that case, definitely microbe has faster response compared with plant and other component. Definitely this mismatch for this time scale or the sensitivity, it will play a role in a system. which it is important. We really want to see. I think that is, uh, I think some scientists design experiment to look at this different response in terms of timing. And as modern community, this also been investigated certain way. What I can say right now, we don't have a very clear understanding of that, but we did do some simulation to show that microbe and plant does show a different response to climate change. For example, the study I showed yesterday for the microbial seasonality. So those is much faster response than plant. Plant have not really shown more lot yet, but microbial seasonality, that's mean it can in the annual time scale, it does play a role impact on the soil carbon cycle.
So now I will move to the fourth category, from science to management. Before I move to that, do audience have any questions about research, about secrets of success origins for Dr. Xu?
Okay.
I'm curious if you, as macrobiologists, run into kind of common misconceptions about your field from people who are maybe less familiar.
What I mean misconception. So for
But like, I don't know, things that people think you do that you really don't do at all, or that macroecologists in general don't do at all. It's like that.
okay. Oh yeah, this is very interesting question. Infinitely, I think is they happen a lot. So sometimes people think I'm doing like the modeling, so they say, okay, you just run model and they don't consider like you're doing a very fine scale process because most kind model is large scale, but they don't think, okay, you're doing really like very fine scale process. For those misconception, I think it's common, but for us, I think we what we can do is just you try to show what you can do with you talk and present on conference and really communicate. So that's I think what we can do try to more like reduce the misconception.
Research your models along with it on the spectrum of how applicable your questions are. So like how many different groups of people can use your information versus the level of fine scale processes you can actually describe. This is, kind of a trade-off between the two of those, where either you can model a really fine scale discrete processes, but then maybe not everybody can use that specific information, or if be able to describe this kind of larger scale. I guess either applicable to different ecosystems or applicable to different processes kind of models that maybe then don't get into the fine nitty-gritty of that research. Where do you tend to find yourself in that spectrum? Or do you think that it really exists?
Yeah, so that's always a problem for the not only for me and I think everyone. So the very fine skill or low skill, the process itself, we do have the connection, but always for scientists working on this extreme two skill, they have much less communication. It's very common to have some misunderstanding. That's what I really want to say that we really need a communication between those fields. And for me, we did a lot for the simulation on multiple skill. So that's what I present really want to see. So we run on the fun skill, we run on the core skill. But we do know this across skill, some process still remain, but some mechanism due to this non-linearity of the every process, some process even completely different. Behavior, what you see in a fine scale, it may not show up in the large scale. So in that aspect, I think the community really need more work to show that how can we connect different skill, how can we really build up the same language for different quite across large scale to really enhance the communication and also increase the efficiency between different field for the collaboration and also maybe inform the manager, right? So you probably know that all the manager, they really care about the large scale. Not so many really care about the fine scale, right? So particularly for the policymaker. So they want to see large scale, how much we can save, how much the cost. But the fine scale process, it doesn't make a lot of sense on the large scale. But we are able to, if we are able to really build this connection, we are able to show the scaling up with different technology, with different advanced tools, that definitely help a lot. I think that's also another reason to really stimulate the collaboration for scientists across different scales. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a climate modeler. I also have similar problems when I do the models because my work, I use GCMs, global climate models, which has a resolution 100 kilometers. Um, but we try to infer the future changes of the clouds, like precipitation. But those models cannot resolve clouds. Then how would you represent those processes in the models? So what we climate scientists do is to parameterize. We train some statistical empirical relationships, then we put that in the GCMs. Um, that's what we can do. And as time goes by, when we have more and more computing powers, we may increase that processes, increase the resolution to like 1 kilometer resolution. But we never thought about the scale of your work. It's really from the macro scale. That's like 1 kilometer resolution. That's what we can do in my field right now. So you just mentioned the manager. I have a question here for you is from the science to management. How do you communicate further complicated modeling to a large audience? And how do you think that managers should or should not use models?
Communication with the management team is always hard. I think it's always hard. I think what I think is most important, sometimes what I did is really that you need to really show them the number. Really exactly show this is, if you do this one, you're likely to pursue some 10% or 20% benefit. And also like to show that this is can be really important. It will affect 20% of the population or 30% population. So show more specific number and more clear information, it always help a lot. That is the measurement. So what's the second question, sorry?
Is how do you think managers should or should not use models?
Okay. So the men themselves, they never use model, right? So they don't do the simulation, they don't do research. But for our as scientists, we definitely, the modeling is important as always, but always rely on the communication collaboration with the field scientists. It's not independent. If you only use model, it doesn't make sense. That's why we really need a strong collaboration with other scientists. We receive the data to parameterize model, to improve model, and also even run the model, you need to have data to validate. So the strong collaboration, it definitely produce much better output and also form a strong team. This strong team definitely it should inform the management team in a much stronger way. So that's my understanding. Yeah.
How do you maintain a sense of hope among your fellow students and fellow ecologists, your students and your fellow ecologists while studying climate-related changes?
I think that is something someone always worry about. Climate change will destroy our society, destroy the entire Earth. I always have quite positive in the end. I don't think that as human society we will like clap. So in somehow we always as a community we are doing research, doing science, produce some solution, potential solution, and then we are able to resolve the climate change at least in a certain way. So definitely involve some like new technology. I think that is always keep positive. That's what I did, and also I really every time when I commute with my peers, my students, I always think so. Climate change is important and does play a role, and sometimes really bad impact on the environment. but we are always positive. We are able to partially resolve those one and consider new technology. So we should able to resolve those climate change issue.
Talking about technology, how do you view AI affect your field of study in the coming years or decades?
Okay. AI has been a big advance in our human society, particularly in the past 5 years or even 10 years. AI has become particularly popular in after COVID. It's really, really important. And for our research, I think AI definitely becoming more and more powerful tools. We use AI for the analysis. For example, simple question, or we always use structural equation model, multiple linear regression to analyze different factor, how this affect the process or function. But with AI, we are able to really understand some even nonlinear function. So nonlinear relationship, how this contribute to your analysis. That is something is better than the simple linear regression. That is analysis. Meanwhile, AI definitely have a lot in terms of what I said earlier is for the organization. So if you want to do some research, it's much better to organize, to summarize information. It definitely help us. AI cannot really replace our really novel idea, but it always help us in terms to get a much better result, and also sometimes the organization, visualization. So in those aspects, this AI definitely play a much, much bigger role. Looking into the future, AI definitely help us on not only the model environment, understanding of the system, ecology, management. So AI definitely play a much role in that. So that's what I want to say. It's definitely next 10 years, AI will be becoming more and more important. Yeah.
How do you manage your lab?
Okay. So many lab is important. It's also it's a my lab itself is not big, so I have a few 3, 4 students, one postdoc, and a few other undergrad students. So the management always like you have to make sure each one is play a big role, and also they are able to fulfill their potential. That's always I want to say. So I always support the student to able to fulfill their potential, to pursue their interest. And meanwhile, I want really to culture a very good climate in the group. So students should help each other, and particularly for the senior student, they're able to help the junior one. And through this, I call more like a hierarchical the structure. So the high level junior senior really provides guidance, provides training opportunity for the junior one. So this benefit for both. So junior one receive really training opportunity like the benefit the skill, hands-on skills, but the senior one receives some benefit of the provide training, some practice opportunity for the training opportunity. Those are important as the PI, so you have to, for me, I have to maintain the entire group and always uh, stimulate the collaboration, communication between different members.
What advice could you provide to our students here, like to be successful in academia or be successful in learning new knowledge? Would you
Okay.
provide any advice to our students?
That is hard. I think I met some student here. Everyone is really smart and a very good student. What I see is most are really passionate about ecology, about research. That is really good. So my suggestion really like to do science. First one, you have to be passionate. So really love what you are doing. If not, you can gradually shift. You can think about maybe pursue some little bit different, but really is you need to love what you are doing. And then second one is really be persistent. So it's very common in our career. We have a lot of failures, like paper was declined, so proposal was declined. It's very, very common. even for me, 90% of our proposal was declined. So that's common, but that's okay. What I can do is like step back and revise and continue it, right? Revise and submit. So that's persistence really important. You have to really be tough. Be tough really is try to think about a way to resolve and keep working on it. Those are really important. Also, third one I want to say really is keep open-minded. Really important. So open-minded means so for the research idea, for the collaboration, and also even for the peers. So anyone, your friend, your classmate, uh, keep communication, and maybe sometime you will receive some idea from someone. So it's always important. Yeah, three suggestions, I think.
Thank you. I remember that when I was a scientist and GFDL, which is a federal lab by NOAA working on climate modeling. I remember my colleague, Dr. Suki Manabe, who is a Nobel Prize laureate in 2021 in physics due to his contribution to climate modeling. So he's really open-minded to every time when someone did a presentation, he was so curious about everything. He was just trying to understand everything that the speaker talked in the presentation. I think that curiosity, that open-minded is the secret for Dr. Manabe to be awarded the Nobel Prize in 2021.
I think it's important for every scientist, everyone. I think really important. Be really keep curious about everything. That's very, very important for the scientist. Yeah.
So my last question for you for this session is, how did you balance work and life? You'll be an easy one for you, maybe a difficult one.
Yeah, this is a hard one. So I think every scientist or you pursue a scientific career is always hard. You always feel you don't have sufficient time. So even you work quite hard, you have a lot of time to work on the project, but I always feel I don't have sufficient time. So in that case, I think my my personal feeling to try to address that one is like first one to focus on several very important project or several important papers. Try to focus on that one in short time period. Try to fix and finish that one before you move to the next one. In that way, it's definitely improve your efficiency to work on that. And second one is try to like again same thing with collaboration. So you have to collaborate with other people to work on some project. If you are not able to do by yourself because too busy, you always can seek help from your collaborator. So those are really important. And meanwhile, so your family, you have to maintain your happy family, your family time. So then, and definitely if you are very happy family, it will support your scientific career. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Xu. That's all the questions I have. Do you have any additional questions from the audience?
Okay.
Peter.
Peter.
To hear you talking about Arthur um,
Okay.
and Robert May, because they work with very simple models, analytically trackable models that you solve in pencil paper. You work with complex models that simulate numerical approaches.
Yeah.
And so how do you see the connection between those classical MacArthur and May kind of models and the kinds of models you work with?
This is very hard, but very interesting question. As I presented yesterday, so the mathematical way to study ecology, it start from very simple equation. So when we understand the ecosystem very long time ago, so if we want to understand the system, at a quite long time, so we don't have a lot of understanding. So most case, let's look at probably 50 years back. So in that time, most of the ecological studies focus on one or two process. Not so many study like a very complex system. In that case, we I think that's why those very simple equation was developed, very simple model developed. But that's one case. But second perspective is like a very simple equation eventually is the very high level understanding of the system. So that's why I really love the work done by MacArthur and Rob May. So even with a simple equation, we are able to understand in very complex system. But what the most recent work on the modeling is like people trying to incorporate more and more mechanism, make the model more and more complex. That's eventually what I did as well. So my model is quite complex. But it's complex model doesn't mean we really want to pursue a very complex dynamic. We want to make sure the very complex dynamic of the system, we are able to use quite simple understanding to explain it. So we start from simple, we come to a complex system, then the overall goal is we are able to pursue, maybe produce a simple explanation or understanding of the complex dynamic. So in that case, I think if later someone produce even if you're able to understand the exam better, we should be able to produce maybe other simple model to describe the system. I think that is really from simple to the complex and then to the simple. If we move and again arrive the simple understanding, that's a big breakthrough, I think, breakthrough for the community. Yeah. Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Xu? If not, then thank you, Dr. Xu.
Okay.
Have a great discussion. Thank you. That was very fruitful.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming to our discussion session with Dr. Xu. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Dr. Xu through email. And thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks. Okay.